everybody. Just doing a quick update here. Some questions that came out to me from the membership. Actually got quite a few questions here, but I'm not going to be able to hit all of these because some of them overlap about stuff that I've already discussed. So I'm going to hit that in another video that I'm going to be doing soon. But these are some information about the workload that's out there and what people are looking for. Listen, like I predicted, the work is extremely slow for this time of year. Majority of our work is infrastructure work, MTA work, Long Island Railroad, heavy highway, and the airports, like I was saying. So for you guys and women who took the time and got your SWAT cards and stuff like that, your employment opportunities were probably a little heavier. For a lot of people struggling out there, I understand it. You got to keep your certs up to date. That requirement falls on you. I know the school makes it a little harder to get into some classes, but there's other advantages out there. Click safety, TSI, I think is one of them. There's other places you get these classes done. No one's going to do it for you, so you got to get out there and bust your ass and make sure these things are up to date. I fight with my brother all the time to make sure his is up to date. I'm a big advocate. I break everyone's shop. I mean, even Doug O'Grady will tell you, I'm always an advocate. I think I broke his shops back in the day, and he had the most amount of certs in his local, and it kept him working. So, all right. With that being said, I got a lot of questions texted me, and everyone going back and forth about the mayor primary and figuring how it's going to affect our industry. Listen, local politics, guys, it affects us. There's nothing around it. I mean, it's been like that since the beginning of time, right? I guess our council backed Andy Cuomo. My family had a big relationship with Andy, especially when I was younger. I met him several times when I was younger. I knew his father very well. My grandfather did a lot with his campaign. And my dad and Andy, I think, worked together at a gas station. One of my dad's friends owned a bunch of gas stations and junkyards back in the day in Queens Village. And I was at his house many times when I was a kid. Mayor Cuomo's house. My dad actually helped with his first campaign back when he ran for governor, when he had no money. But listen, Cuomo ran. He gave it a good shot. I think the council backed him. They thought he was the option. He's in there as an independent. I still think when you look at these elections, guys, the Democratic Party, only 36% of the Democratic Party will vote in the primaries. Okay, majority of those are going to be very liberal people that vote in those things, mostly school teachers and education people who tend to be more liberal. They have a lot of time off of work. They get certain certain things to push them to vote more. Okay, Mandami did a great job, right? I don't agree with a lot of his views. Listen, I don't think he's the end of the world like everyone's painted him. I don't think he's this crazy Muslim guy. Like someone liked to point out to me, if you just look at his wife, his wife walks, is a very beautiful woman walking around, dresses in miniskirts. So this guy is not some radical Muslim like people are going to try to sell you that. So I don't think that's it. Listen, are his views very liberal? Yes. Do I agree with him? No. I do not agree with those liberal views. But I don't think he's the end of the world, and I think he would do a good job. The bottom line is it's going to be up to the members to cast that vote and figure out how to do it. Hold on a second, guys. Bella's barking. Bella, get over here. Get over here. Bella, quiet. Sorry about that interruption. When you do live feeds, this is what you deal with. So basically, we have him running now, and we have Adams running. He stepped in as an independent, and Cuomo turned his ties to an independent as well. And you have Curtis Leewood running as the Republican. Now, Curtis does have a lot of good views, in my opinion. I think he's done a lot. They're going to, run him to the mill. But the problem with a Republican in New York City is, I think it's about 6-1 registered voters against a Democrat in New York. But listen, Giuliani did it back in the day. Even Bloomberg, I believe it was a registered Republican, and he won. Could it be done? It's when a three-man race, anything's possible. When you throw this many people into it, I think you're going to, Adams going to run. A lot of people are not happy with Adams. Neither am I, We obviously thought Cuomo was our best bet. He probably still is, to be honest with you. Probably our best odds with Cuomo. Mandami, I don't think some of his views as far as for business, I don't think it's very healthy for us in the business world. Listen, everybody wants everything for free, but in a global market and everything like that, if you can't make it remember, the wealthy people just leave. They don't, if it's not practical to do business here, most people will leave. And that's what they're doing already in New York. We got to get crime under control. Defunding the police is not the option. Anybody of us that work to the city now, you walk through it smells like pot and piss everywhere you go. The subways are disgusting now. There are homeless people everywhere. I know they're doing a lot now to put money in, hopefully, to get more mental institutions up and running again, which is very important because a lot of people need help. They can't function in society. They probably need to be medicated, and that's why a lot of people, I think, end up using recreational drugs because they're dealing with whatever problems they have, so they tune to that direction. So, listen, in that point, a lot of them are veterans. A lot of people that were born with disabilities. So, you can see a lot of these people aren't they're not playing with a full deck of cards. They're in these positions when they're living on the side. Some just falling on hard times, right? So, for that being said, how will the mayor race work out? It's going to be a tough one, guys. You're going to have a party line. It's going to pull apart. I think about 2 million people vote in the New York City election, if I'm not mistaken. That's roughly about it. So, you pull 3 candidates in there and, that were all Democrats at one point, and you throw a good Republican in there like Curtis Leewood. Who knows what's going to come out of this, The main thing is, like I say, with the U.S. economy, you need a strong GDP to get the work, right? Strong economy. It's up to us to organize it, right? So if we don't have, the work isn't there, it ain't going to make much of a difference whether there's a Democrat or anyone in there, right? It's just like us. If we make $200 an hour, but there's no work for us to work on, what's the point, right? So we have to gain within that market share. I think we fall along behind it. I think carpenters are becoming less and less of the middle class. Businesses are making profits. We have more millionaires and billionaires walking the planet than ever before in history, right? And we're getting a shrinking middle class. What does that tell you? More of the wealthy are making money, and people that I know that are wealthy friends of mine, their money just makes money, right? So they get to a point in life where they sell their businesses and cash in, and they just sit back and relax, and their money is making money for them. They don't have to work anymore. So people like that, they can't relate to us, right? We get up every day, put a tool belt on, but anyway, so that's pretty much what that type of politics. I want to hit some questions that you guys asked me here. Let me see if I can find these things, because some guys are asking me my opinion about what's going on with the council. Guys are asking me questions here about what's going on with the council. Listen, when the council throws at you that there's not going to be a merger, I guess the way they look at it is they won't be, right? Because technically they won't merge the council. But back in 2011, they worked with Barbara Jones, who's hired as a city council, right? She's like their lawyer. She's the former Eastern District judge or something like that. She helped get the funds taken out of the stipulation in order. So now when they do a merger, right, the Carpenters, the International wants to do 3 funds throughout the country. It'll be a West Coast, Mid-Atlantic, and an Eastern District, right? So now that the consent decree doesn't have anything to do with the funds, they'll be able to move those funds like they're doing with our benefits, right? They're moving our benefits to that independent fund it's run by Frank Spencer, along with this prescription plan thing. They're doing it to supersede over what Express Scripts is doing, and I'll get into that in a second. But by moving the funds, they can sell you guys and tell you, oh, we're not merging, but if the money leaves us, then there's nothing left. And how they do that, the medical will be easier to pull out. The funds will be more difficult. But listen, this wasn't an overnight plan. They've been working at this for the last at least 15 years, maybe longer. So I'm pretty sure, these guys aren't stupid. They probably have the ducks in a row in what they're doing. If they move the plan out, that's going to be a big change to a lot of you. So I'm not going to lie to you. They could listen. All these BAs, they can tell you. Believe me, they're being kept in the dark. They don't even know what the hell's going on. They're just going to tell you what they told you, right? But if you look at the way the merger is and talk to people from Westchester, New Jersey, Long Island, they have 62 retirement, no medical, no retirement medical. A lot of these guys, these other jurisdictions, they have no banked hours. And that's going to be a big problem for a lot of our guys. A lot of our guys that work in the Javits Center and stuff like that, they do the 1,000 hours a year, right? I think it's 840 for a quarter. And if you work more hours, those banked hours help us the following year. By taking that away from a lot of members, it's going to hurt us. I think Jersey, these guys have to do 1,630 hours just to get the top tier medical and everything and their thing, and then they don't roll hours over to the next year. In this industry, that's important because you could have 3 good years, and then things. You could be a good company guy with a company, and that company just gets slow, or they lose some bids, or a new super comes in and they bring their guys from another company in. It happens all the time. I remember when Glenn Petition and Carlos came to work for National, he moved all his guys from Glenn Petition to National, right? And it's happening now with guys at Donaldson. I know new guys that moved around back in the day with Dougie O'Connor's guys when he was a super there. It was his guys, and he had his boys there, and that's the way it ran, right? But, we're gonna, listen. The retirement medical is a problem. I don't see the problem with the trustees that sit on the funds, how they have a responsibility, an additional responsibility to make sure those funds are whole. How they pull them off it, I don't know how they're going to do it, guys. But that's the plan, right? They want to save money. And, when Frank Spencer takes over this medical plan and their funds, they're going to take over that money, right? And but the cost, so they can make more profit, they're going to cut corners. And who's the first person to cut corners is the retirees. They're going to pull a medical for the retirees. So the one thing I can ask and tell all of you is, if you're retiring now or planning on retiring, or people who just recently retired, make sure they keep their union dues up to date. Your vote does matter, guys. And when they're going to make these decisions, they look at the numbers are across the board. I lost this last election by 740 votes. Okay, I will be running in the next election. I made that decision, so I'll let you guys know that right now. I will be running against Paul Caperso or anyone else who decides to run for EST. I don't feel like I have a choice. I think I got to put my head in the race because, I'm not going to let this happen. If I'm in there, this is a deal breaker to me. I don't care what McCarran says or anybody says. We're not risking my members' rights for medical coverage and their benefits. We just can't do it. And I don't know how the trustees to the funds, they'll be able to pull it off because you got guys like Medeo and Piccarello. They're going to do what Paul tells them to do. And I get it. That's what they're there for. That's why Paul put them there. The business ends, for me, if I was a contractor, I paid $808, $108 an hour in man hours, right, for all the workers, and $15 of that went into the medical fund, right? And my guys paid into that, right? And now you're going to tell me I paid all that money for all those years, and now I have no retirement medical? But after the merger goes through, it's just like they did with the council back in the day when the council took over. The locals had no more power. The locals just really give out T-shirts and stickers, and you go to a meeting to keep you occupied, but the council has no power. If you don't sit on that ninth floor, most of these BAs have zero power, and the companies know it. The contractors don't even. That's why I make calls to them. These project owners, project supers, and owners, they call me. They don't call the council. They don't talk to business agents because if they need something, they don't even respect half these guys. And these guys don't care. They're just there for the double pension. Most of them care less. They're just trying to look at the clock in the morning, fake it through the bake it, and get out of there, and hopefully can make it through without anything hitting them too much, right? Stand out in front of a building, blow a whistle, say the rats are in the building, go home, and hope for the best. Right? Not saying they're all bad guys, but listen, they're not going to rock the boat, guys. They're just going to try to make it through the best they can. And they're not happy either. You think any of those guys want to lose their retirement better? Fuck no, man. They don't want to lose it. But listen, if they're going to, my gut tells me the merger happens with the benefit money. The money's gone. People tell me they can't sell the building. Open your eyes, guys. I don't care who you are. If you work in that building, I know some of you that talk to me on the side. We're not stupid, guys. Who owns the building? The pension fund. So when the money goes, the building can go, all right? There'll be no need for that building eventually. They're not going to keep it forever. And all they got to do is diversify the funds after everything's said and done, and they don't want to keep too much capital on real estate and blah, 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 blah. Believe me, all they need is a trustee vote. You guys don't get a vote on whether they sell that building. It's trustees. And that, believe me, guys, that deal will be done behind closed doors. That'll be done. They'll figure out that building's worth $900 million. And believe me, there'll be money falling off that table. God knows where it'll end up and whose pocket will get it, But I'll tell you, that'll be one hell of a deal going on. Me personally, I think if we kept that building, I think it should be, they could do 15 stories, I think, on top of it. That should be brought in with an investment firm, and they should go, rent out the upper floors and figure out something like they did with the International. Should be done there. Giving up our location in New York City is a bad, bad decision. We're the New York City District Council Carpenters for a reason. There was 250 councils in this country. We're down to 13. We are the only district council that votes in our leadership, rank and file. We're the only one in the country, guys. And like I said, when this merger happens and everything goes through, that'll change. Now, if they merge the funds and if the election does stay, let's say they keep it, what does it all mean? How does that work out? If you're the EST, how do you negotiate a package and a benefit package, and then the funds are controlled by the Eastern District? I don't know how they're going to figure this out, but it is their plan. You know, I've been told by more than one person. On their end, I get it. But for a business move and have control of the money and the assets, look at the girl that was in charge of the funds, right? She packed it in. You know, who quits a job making $380,000 a year? She quit her job and she goes to work for Frank Spencer's company. Good business opportunity, who knows? But you know, how many people in this economy quit a job with that? She started off as like a secretary in the council, worked her way up. She's making, you know, her husband works at the council too. You know, she's making $380,000 a year. They just posted a job. Now she's going to go to work for another company, and she'll get royalties there. I mean, listen, do I blame her? Probably not. You know, it's a smart move because she knows that pension fund and benefit funds won't be there eventually. So she's going to make her move now. She's not going to stick around for the next year or two because that 9th floor, 10th floor won't exist soon. They're going to get rid of it. You know, it just makes sense. Just do the math in your head. You know, look around you guys. Open your eyes. You know, open your eyes to what's going on. Why would someone quit that job and pack up and leave? I saw they posted her job the other day online at the district council. You know, it makes you wonder, but my gut tells me there's a reason what's behind it. So no one's going to tell us the truth, right? So that's basically it. We gotta guess ourselves as we go around. But this is the industry we live in, right? You know, and past elections have told us one thing. You know, they told us about PLAs, and then they lied to us about that, and then they did it with the shop stewards, right? After the last election, I ran with Patty Cream. They took they waited till after the election, and they stripped all the stewards. You could work at 39 hours a month, which I thought was a real dirtbag move. But they don't care, you know, because they're detached from us. They don't understand, you know. They're not the ones carrying a lunchbox, getting on the subway every day, coming to work. They don't understand. And a lot of them, when they were in the business, they were taken care of. They were there in a different time. They were just, a phone call was made. They were put on jobs. They were stewards. They were taken care of. They were on the hockey team. They were in the bagpipe band. I was there. I saw those guys. They were, you know, they didn't have to work. You know, they didn't hustle like we did. You got guys in this business who's never had his name on an out of work list. It's not that they're better carpenters than you are. They got a hook. They were put there by somebody. They got a last name, you know. You know, back in the day, if your name, you know, ended in a vowel, you did well. You know, my local, if you had a brogue, you did good. You know, there was different ways around it. That's how they took care of each other. You know? So people were put there because if they didn't get the wink and a nod and they did the wrong thing, you know, the company knew that they'd get a kick in the ass down the road. So they played along with the system. As broken as it was, it worked for them. So, but with that being said, I think we have to worry about our funds and just look at the common sense behind it, right? So I put a thing up yesterday about the Southern District. They went up to the company Temco. They were doing work for the School Construction Authority. I think they did do work for some hospitals too. They got caught doing a big thing right now, lying on their funds and hiring illegal workers on the job site. They're not the only company doing it. They got caught. Good for them. You know, let them suffer. I hope the U.S. Attorney's Office does prosecute these owners and go after them. It's a start, right? So, you know, like I tell people all the time, if you see stuff going on, make the call. You know, go up to the guy, card him. They don't want to card him. You know, call the business agent. You know, do yourself a favor. Put it in a text message. If they don't get an answer, email it to them. And if you're not getting any answers and you think something looks fishy, by all means, reach out to me. I'll help you get the ball rolling. We'll call the Department of Labor, or I'll help you call the council and make sure people do their jobs, you know. I will say one thing. Listen, Paul Caperso, you know, even if I run against him in an election, I will tell you, Paul's a pretty advocate about doing his job. I think Paul does have a very strong work ethic, and he don't bullshit. So I think if you reach out to Paul too, if you see something that looks really sketchy and you don't think anyone or a business agent or someone's looking the other way or something like that, you know, and you think it's something reasonable, send it to Paul. You know, call the IG's office. Either one of them, you're going to get the thing. But Paul will do the right thing. I will tell you one thing. He does follow through on things. So he makes sure people dot their I's and cross their T's, which he should do as the ESD. So I think doing his job is a good thing. So so I think if we have another election, it'll be sometime in November. Right? So I guess nominations might be September, October. We'll see how that all works out. Obviously, I'm going to have to put a ticket together. I didn't think I'd be back in the game again, but I don't think I have a choice. So we're gonna, we'll move forward with this. It's the right thing to do. I think we gotta find a way to help our members out. I think hanging out book bags and turkeys, people on the street, isn't putting our members to work. I think we need to reapproach things in a different way. I think we need to bring these candidates in and actually ask them questions on a forum. Let the members actually speak to them. You know, it wouldn't hurt to do that. I think. Give everyone a shot. Let all these candidates come down and talk to us. We shouldn't just be throwing our hats in the ring with one person. But, I don't know. We'll see what happens. Listen, if history repeats itself, they all end up screwing us anyway, right? Dinkins was terrible, and Adams, forget about it. This guy, he ended up really screwing us over. Listen, I think Cuomo has a lot of deals set up with his with developers and everything like that. We can't, as a council, outbid the private sector. You just can't. You'll never get that money that they're throwing, these developers are throwing them. These politicians don't tell us what we want to hear, but then they're going to another rally or talking in an office room or having a drink and talking to a developer, and the developer's going to get what they want. I mean, Adams did it to us, right? Bellagio, forget about him. He sold us out more ways than we know what to do with. So, Mandami, I don't know. Mandami he ran a great campaign, guys. He got some young voters out there. He did a lot. I think someone was telling me he had super bottles campaigning for him. Like, he really went out there and old school campaigning and pound the pavement, and he got those key voters. Like I said, he did have his 36%, which typically is more socialist and liberal voters. So he did have that upper power for the primary. But listen, you got to give the guy credit. He's a young guy. He's 33 years old. Listen, some of his radical ideas, defund the police, a lot of those statements were taken 7-8 years ago. If anyone knows, you're in your early 20s. They always say, like, your 20s, they used to say all the time, if you weren't a Democrat in your 20s, you didn't have a heart. And they say if you're not a Republican by the time you're in your 30s, you don't have a brain. But I think you got to be more conservative. Listen, I was a Democrat for many, many years. I'm more of an independent now. I don't believe in either side. I'm not super conservative about pushing stuff, agendas. I think, we need to help people, and I don't believe, you can't just leave. We need social programs. Let's face it, Social Security, a lot of things, a lot of these liberal societies and socialists do have that do make sense. Transgender stuff and all stuff like that's out of control. That's my opinion. I think the Democrats went too far left. And listen, Bernie Sanders says it all the time. We need a third party for the working class. I think we do. All this wealth out there, and we're struggling to make ends meet. Ends meet is ridiculous. What is a livable income right now in the tri-state area? People tell you they make $100,000 a year. $100,000 a year to me is probably just not even middle class anymore. It's probably poverty rate. You can figure if you pay your taxes, you probably get $70,000 out of that. An average car right now is $100,000, right? When I bought a 92, 93 pickup truck, brand new was like $13,000-14,000. A new pickup truck today is $100,000, at least $100,000. You get some of these nicer trucks, $130,000, like Denali's and everything, right? So I didn't want to make a long video here, but I want to point out that I will be setting up a thing to do some interviews, some podcasts. I'm going to have some people on here. I'm even going to ask Billy Walsh. So Billy, if you end up seeing this video, you're going to be getting a call from me soon. I want to get Billy in here. Billy, I have a lot of respect for. Billy was very big in politics in the union. He was a woodworker. Billy went through the ranks. Billy always fought for a little guy in the industry, just like guys like Levi. I'm going to ask Levi to be on here. I always have the highest respect for Levi. We don't agree on politics, me and Levi, but Levi fought. Guy worked in the field as a carpenter. He came in this industry working non-union most of his career. Never met a guy who respected the union as much as him. Levi would give his shirt off his back. He helped everybody. He ran the local while working in the field with a tool belt on. I can't name one president of the local who did that in my whole career. He's the only guy I can remember doing that worked that long, and went on a job site. Levi found his own work, hustled that guy, and he put the other guys to work and always helped everybody out. And he did that, and he ran a local every day, which is pretty amazing. Like, a lot of guys, they don't want to be bothered anymore, and I don't blame them. Like, you get out of work to get involved in that. That's why a lot of council members held those positions now, because they're in that building. But if you're working elsewhere, last thing you want to do, get out of work and head into the city and deal with that stuff. It's kind of like a thankless job from this point of the game. But, interviewing these guys would be great, right? Get their opinion on what they think about the union and how they're enjoying retirement and, how important it was for them to put their time to their career to get to that point. Because that's the end goal for everybody here. It's not your paycheck, it's your benefits that matter, guys. You're helping the guy ahead of you, and you're going to help the guy behind you. So that's the goal here in this business. We got to look out for each other, both the brothers and the sisters in this union. So, all right. So I don't think I have any questions here, but listen, if anybody needs anything, you know how to get in contact with me. I do get some information about people working for cash, for jobs. Listen, guys, I'm not going to get involved in that stuff. I'm not going to commend it in any way. If you're having an issue and you see that stuff, you have to report it. I can't be getting it from a third-party person. I can't be reporting people's problems. I don't have it. But if you want to call me, I'll tell you how to go about doing it. You can make an anonymous call to the IG's office if you want to. I think it's important to you, if you're working for a union contractor and they're paying the guys on the job cash, you do have a due diligence, in my opinion, to report something like that. Just for yourself. Contractors shouldn't get away with it. It undermines the system in general. If we let one person get away with it, it'll continue happening. And then we have the situations we have now where people are getting told to stay home, and the guys that are working for cash are working for cash. And that's a sad situation. People are robbing from the system, and we can't have that. So, sending me a text message, an email on that. You got to be willing to, you got to get the people to come forward. They got to talk to me, and they got to be willing, to come talk to Paul. They got to be willing to talk to Rich Green. I can't do this on my own. My resources only go so far. If they don't want to do their jobs, we will make the move to go to the Department of Labor. I do have connections there. We will, but let's go through the process the right way. Let's make sure, we're moving through. And you got to put your head out there. Standing up for yourself. We have to do it, guys. Unions are built by guys standing up for themselves. You can't sit there and just take it. That shows a sign of weakness, and that's why our industry is dying out. Demanding what you're being paid is not a bad thing. Your medical, your benefits, because these cash deals, they end up screwing you. And guys are telling me $40, $60 an hour cash. Guys, I wouldn't do it. It's not worth it to you. I'm telling you, go drive an Uber on the weekend. That's what I would do. I wouldn't risk my career in the industry. You get tainted that way. There's no coming back. They bring up on charges. You'd be lucky they don't throw you out of the union. So don't risk it. All right. That's about it. Listen, make sure you get your certs up to date. If you have any questions, call down to the school. I think you can get a printout, email it to you so you can check all your dates. Make sure you stay on top of it. Get your MTA certification, very important. Get your Long Island Railroad certification, probably one of the easiest ones to do. It's an online class, it's 1 hour. I just got called for a job recently to work some overtime doing protection work. So it's good to have that. You never know what's going to pop in. For those guys getting retired, people looking, you can go online. There's some labor positions with for civil service that are out there. If anyone's interested in going for them, I think the labor right now is getting like $47 or $48 an hour. Not bad for labor, just pushing a broom. It's a good gig. After 10 years at the city, you got medical for life. Used to be 5, back to 10. I heard it's going back to 5 again, but right now it's 10. So 5 years to be vested, 10 years of medical for life. But if you're a young guy in your 40s and you're not working right now, or 30s, and your foot in the door with the city, you get in there. There's only ways to move up the ranks. You take classes and tests. You can become project managers, supers, safety managers with the city. So that might. I'm not encouraging you to leave the Carpenters Union, but listen, you got to keep your options open. So I think applying for those jobs is smart moves. So like I said, guys, I'm going to start doing a podcast. Probably start it within the next week or two. So please, if you have questions or any concerns or anything you think is important that you'd like to see us talk about, I'm going to have Mike Bielo back on again. I'll talk to him. I think I'm going to ask Pete Corrigan to come on and maybe speak with him, interview him on some issues about the city and what he thinks about the industry. He's a very brilliant kid. He's not a kid anymore. He's in his mid-30s, but I keep calling him a kid. He's got a lot of outlines on what he thinks we need to move in. He has a lot of opinions on this Maddow race and what he thinks is important. And I think talking to someone like him is good for our industry. Give us an idea of where we're failing and what we should be leading on. listen, I don't have all the answers too, right? So we all got to stay open, right? Whatever works for us. And like I said, this young guy Mandami, you can say what you want about him, but he's a young guy. Maybe he's open. Maybe like you could form him into understanding what we need. You got a guy like Cuomo. He's been around a long time. He's already set in his ways. So maybe having a young guy there might not be the end of the world. We don't know yet. Listen, we rolled the dice with Bellagio. We rolled the dice with Adams, and they promised to the world and did nothing for us. So we thought they were going to be the saving grace. So you never know what the next guy is going to be. So getting the right person in there and talking to people and hearing people's point of views is what it's all about. So if we can get that, and we can reach out to these developers and hopefully start getting on the same track. There's a lot of stuff that they're planning for the city. And like I kept saying in my last video, is the key thing is getting these companies to put people back in the desks. Because without that, that's going to make the difference to changing. They're supposedly saying 2027 is going to be the breakaway, right? So we got 2 more years, right, till that happens. So if that's 2 years, that means by sometime next year we're going to start doing fit outs and renovations in these buildings around Manhattan. So to get to that point, we need to make sure that the crime is down in the city, make people feel safe again, and having the right mayor in there is going to make that difference, right? Give these cops the opportunity to do their jobs. Make sure that the crime is down, and make sure that the people that are living here see that there's opportunity here. Because if there isn't, they're going to finish school and they're going to pick options to move other places. I think a lot of kids that go to college, they go to the States and they're like, the hell with it, I'm not coming back to New York. There's nothing there for me. Too expensive to live, and I can't make the money to survive there. So, all right. Listen, if anyone has any questions for me, you know how to get in touch with me. I see Tammy just popped on the video. Hi, Tammy. How you doing? Hope you're enjoying retirement. Maybe I'll bring you in for an interview. Would love to hear from her. Tammy's a great girl. She was an organizer for many years. She roughed it out there. She got in the business when it was tough. It wasn't easy, right? I can only imagine doing those picket duties out the freezing cold. But let me tell you, I will say one thing, guys. In this industry, we can talk all we want, but organizing to me is probably one of the hardest jobs to do, because I say it all the time, it's the most thankless job to do. You wake up every day and you fight 10 different fights, and you might win 2 out of the 10. So those other 8, you just like, it's a lost cause. You don't get ahead, right? And then you get screamed at, and you get called every name in the book, and you're being called a motherfucker and yelled at, and that means you're doing a good job. So when you're getting yelled at and berated and screamed at by developers and contractors, because you're basically doing a good job, because you're harassing them to make sure they do the right thing. So like I always said, when you're out there and you're doing your picket duty, make sure you shake an organizer's hand. Remember, that guy out there, that job isn't easy, man. They're out there 5 days a week, rain, snow, they're doing a tough job. And let me tell you something, they might be blowing a whistle and it looks easy in some cases, and I might break their balls themselves, but they might not win that battle, but hopefully that battle helps us down the road, like I did with the McDonald's thing, right? All that work they did at Columbia got the McDonald's guys' eyes open, and they reached out to me, and now here we are trying to make sure that they're on up and renovating McDonald's work. So, but that was done by the organizers. They was out there pushing those things and keeping the campaign and the pressure on. And it's a thankless job sometimes. They're there, and you do all that work and you don't get that job, but they're building the momentum for the next job and building the momentum for the one after that. So always remember, organizing is a tough job, and I brought that up because I saw Tammy on here. She put a lot of time into that throughout the years. All right, so everyone who's out there, you got my number. If you want to reach out to me, private message if you have any questions, and figure back another week. By next week, I'll have a podcast set up. I don't know if I'll do it live or I'll do it pre-recorded, but put that in your comments. If somebody thinks it should be live and you can do it, I can have questions coming in. Maybe we'll do that as well. Make it more interactive with people. Maybe we'll do a live one. I believe in being honest to people. That's why, listen, I'd rather just roll from the hip here and give it a shot. I never said I was perfect at what I'm doing, so I don't have all the answers, but I'll fight for the members tooth and nail. I want to make sure everyone has the same opportunities in life I had coming into this industry. And I think a lot of people out of there were either giving the doors wide open, bringing them in, and they don't know what it's like to fight like I did. And they're too quick to give up what we have, so we got to put a stop to that. All right, everyone, enjoy your Sunday, all right? And I will be talking to you soon. Have a good one. Bye.